People love to talk about how the NFL is a copycat league, meaning that once one team finds success with a particular strategy, you can expect to see a slew of other bottom-dweller teams try to recreate that success. But it's more than just a copycat league. It's also an insanely cyclical league. Once the trend has been hot for a little too long, the league does a hard switch back the other way. Just think about how the demographic of NFL head coaches have changed so drastically in recent years. Before the Rams hired the 34-year-old Sean McVay to be their head coach, it was commonplace in the NFL to hire seasoned head coaches, guys that had been in the league for decades regardless of how successful they were. I'm looking at you, Jeff Fisher. Anyway, after McVay jumped out to an amazing start with the Rams, it seemed like every other franchise that was hiring a new head coach was looking for a young, up-and-coming guy with a fresh outlook on things. Matt Nagy in Chicago, Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, the examples go on and on. The decision makers in the NFL seem to see something new that they think works, and then dive head in first without actually considering the why behind the success their competitors are having. Instead, they rush off looking for a certain archetype in the aforementioned example of a young offensive-minded head coach, even if he doesn't quite live up to McVay's ability as a coach. This is how it has always been in the NFL. After the Washington Redskins offensive line back in the late 1980s and early 1990s, also known as the Hogs, helped lead the Redskins to 3 Super Bowl championships, all of a sudden, every team was loaded with absolute units on their offensive lines. While some have stuck around longer than others, there is no shortage of these trends that have swept through the NFL. It used to be all about lining up man-on-man and smash-mouth football. Everyone has heard the legends of Vince Lombardi's Packers or Coach Ditka's Bears in the 80s that would just bully the opposing defenses at the line of scrimmage. Then everyone wanted to imitate the West Coast offense that was popularized by George Seifert's San Francisco 49ers in the early 1990s. NFL teams will always continue to follow whatever the hottest trend is, at least that's how it seems. This doesn't just set back the teams that fail to properly implement a new play style or philosophy. Sometimes these trends get so out of hand, it has a negative impact on the league as a whole. In fact, one of them is ruining the NFL as we know it, and that is the insane amount that today's mediocre quarterbacks are being overvalued and overpaid. It has gotten so bad that people around the league are starting to take a step back and wonder how we ended up here. The answer is pretty simple. Quarterback play is crucial to the success of a football team. We have seen this proven time and time again. The Joe Montana 49ers, Peyton Manning and the Colts, obviously Tom Brady and the Patriots. No one is here to dispute that these top-tier quarterbacks shouldn't get paid. The best ones in the league are worth their weight in gold. But where way too many NFL teams are running into trouble is when they have a good quarterback, one they like, the fans like, and he's able to get the team into the playoffs, maybe even win a game or two. They rush to sign him to an enormous extension. This happens when the general managers start acting out of fear that they're no longer able to evaluate the quarterback objectively. I understand that they definitely don't want to discourage the fans by letting a good one walk, but I think that if a lot of these players' personnel decision makers were being completely honest with themselves and the fans, they'd admit that as much as they like their QB, he just isn't good enough to lead them to a Super Bowl. Especially not when he's getting paid way above what his actual talent level warrants. And when these teams become so determined to lock down a franchise quarterback, they end up paying exorbitant salaries to the mediocre signal callers instead of properly allocating it across the different position groups, and the end result is valuable players walk, free agents are missed out on, and even previously well-structured teams begin to deteriorate. We see this happen repeatedly. Think about a team like the Minnesota Vikings. They've had one of the most talented rosters, top to bottom, over the past few years. Weapons like Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs on the outside, a slew of talented running backs including Dalvin Cook, their most recent stud, and of course, an awesome defense. The one piece that they felt they were missing, a franchise QB. The team struggled to lock down a true QB1 dates back nearly a full decade, when an aging Brett Favre donned the purple and gold, leading the team to an NFC Championship game appearance. In the time since, they've had guys like Christian Ponder, Matt Castle, Sam Bradford, and most recently Case Keenum. So it is understandable why they let themselves fall into reaching for a mediocre quarterback. Their error in logic is not in thinking that making a big-time free agent acquisition at quarterback would help their team, but instead it was reaching and overpaying for a guy that has proven on multiple occasions that he really isn't that guy, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is the quintessential poster boy for this argument because while he is a competent starter and he has put up the numbers in the NFL, I think he would be hard-pressed to find someone who thinks he is worth the 3-year, $84 million deal that the Vikings signed him to. Did I mention it was fully guaranteed? At the time of the deal, he was the highest-paid player in NFL history. Seems like a bit of a stretch for the one-time Pro Bowler. While this may seem like a one-off or a little anecdotal, there's a ton of data that supports our hypothesis that overpaying a mediocre QB can ruin a franchise or at the very least, set it back in a big way. None of the 5 highest paid quarterbacks in 2018 by average salary made the playoffs. That list includes Aaron Rodgers, Atlanta's Matt Ryan, Minnesota's Kirk Cousins, 49ers' Jimmy Garoppolo, and Detroit's Matthew Stafford. And again, this isn't to say that the aforementioned group of quarterbacks aren't talented, they are. All of them have been in the playoffs before, but as their contracts have inflated and their production plateaued, it has become increasingly harder for the teams to put a competitive enough group of players around them. Zach Moore, a salary cap expert, summed it up well to The Ringer. Once you decide a guy can't win a Super Bowl, you should figure out how to get off that path with him. You cannot pay a middling starter like an elite guy. It would be an overstatement to say that the team can't pay their quarterback a big salary and put together a successful team. There will always be quarterbacks that are worth the money, the players like Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, and Tom Brady that can take their respective teams to a whole other stratosphere. But interestingly enough, these 3 quarterbacks' deals have actually become bargains over time, especially as other NFL teams handcuff their cap situations by inking disastrous QB contracts. Brady in particular is known for his willingness to take the team-friendly deals because of the premium he places on having a well-rounded roster. Patriots owner Robert Kraft commented on this back in 2013 when he and Brady had just negotiated a modest extension amidst the quarterback gold rush. "I was just trying to stay ahead of the curve. If we were going to have to pay him elite quarterback money and have elite quarterback cap numbers, I just didn't think we would be able to build a team. We don't want to have a team where we're paying 18 to 20% to a player on the cap." And Kraft, unsurprisingly, has been proven to be right about that seemingly arbitrary percentage he threw out there in 2013. The only team to have ever won the Super Bowl while having its 2 highest paid players make more than 21.6% of the team's total salary cap is the 49ers, back in 1994 with a team that starred Steve Young and Jerry Rice. The 2017 Philadelphia Eagles, who beat Kraft's Patriots in the Super Bowl, paid their 2 highest paid players just over 11% of the cap. During that same year, the Giants, who finished a measly 3-13, and paid Eli Manning and Olivier Vernon around 22% of the team's total cap. Now, that isn't to say that it's impossible for teams to succeed when they tie up a huge chunk of cap space. 2016 NFC champion Atlanta Falcons had 25% of their cap space allocated to Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. The Saints paid Drew Brees and Cameron Jordan over 20% of their cap space and have been big-time contenders over the past few seasons. So, what gives? How come some teams are so pitifully hamstrung by their albatross contracts, while some are able to make legitimate runs at the Super Bowl? Well, the reason is twofold. First, it really helps when the players that are getting allocated all of that money actually perform. Matt Ryan was the NFL MVP playing for that Falcons team. Julio Jones was an All-Pro. Drew Brees has led the league in completion percentage the past 2 seasons and finished second in MVP voting in 2018. Cam Jordan went All-Pro once, earned 2 trips to the Pro Bowl, and has had at least 12 sacks each of the last 2 seasons. See the correlation here? I know it seems obvious to say that you need your high-paid players to perform well to win games, but so many NFL general managers seem to lack the foresight on some of these deals that they are handing out. The second key to success when a significant chunk of the team's salary cap is allocated to a couple of players is success in the draft. Since the most recent changes to the collective bargaining agreement, rookie deals have become increasingly valuable. Look at the production that the Saints get out of Alvin Kamara, or even a more extreme example, Pat Mahomes in Kansas City. After launching 50 touchdowns, winning the NFL MVP in his first year as a starter, and proving to be an out-of-this-world talent, Mahomes is still due just under $4 million this year. Compare that to the deals that Alex Smith, Kirk Cousins, and Matt Stafford are playing under, and think about the difference in production. Overpaying a quarterback has become increasingly crippling for NFL teams as the league's overall revenue has risen. While this might seem counterintuitive, it is true. The league's rise in revenue pushed the salary cap from around $120 million back in 2013 to over $188 million currently. And as a result, teams have much more flexibility in how they approach building their rosters. This means that the well-run organizations have more resources to bring in more talent, and that just widens the gap between them and the dysfunctional ones. This is why we are seeing such a huge disparity in the NFL these days, and frankly, why the parity that the league has boasted about for so long is suddenly starting to dissipate. Because way too many teams are taking the increased cap and completely wasting it on some mediocre quarterback, all because they are too afraid to wait for a real franchise quarterback to come along. And until these teams smarten up, we are just going to see the Patriots, the Seahawks, and the other teams that take a more intelligent approach to this process, sitting atop the standings and competing for Super Bowls. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to click the subscribe button down below. If you liked the video, then hit that like button. We'd really appreciate it. And last but not least, don't forget to tune into TPS every single day for more cool videos. And we'll see you guys next time.